I'm Dr. Tim McGrew. I'm a Christian philosopher, and I enjoy building connections with people at Atheist Edge.
And further than that, we've talked about this before in other roundtables, where the concept of not only forgiving someone's sin or forgiving someone's wrongdoing through another person, but having that forgiveness absolve them of the action in and of itself.
That is a good point.
It's as if it hasn't happened
Right.
at all. You are cleansed of your guilt for that, and it's not about asking for forgiveness and being forgiven and still acknowledging that there was a wrongdoing. It's about erasing it completely, and that in and of itself, it's not beautiful. It's not moral.
So this is a thought experiment Owen likes to do. If Anne Frank died in the gas chamber as a devout Jew, she's burning in hell. If the Nazi that closed the door on that gas chamber repented later, he's in heaven.
Yeah.
So any theology that puts the Nazi in heaven and Anne Frank in hell, clearly misguided.
No understanding of what real justice
Well,
is.
and then real quick, also the idea that it's an equal, that it's such a large sacrifice. This person died, suffered for a short time, and then died only for 3 days, and then came back.
Right.
It wasn't a
Yeah.
killing of his son.
People have even
He's
suffered
not dead.
longer than that, right?
Yeah, he's not gone. Somebody who's dying of AIDS or malaria in Africa, like that's an incredibly
Can last decades.
it's a much larger sacrifice for whatever that would be for, and a lot of people don't even look at because we live in this American Christian perspective of you look around you and everything's beautiful and everything seems to have worked out for everybody and there's a plan for everything because everything's nice and pretty.
Middle class bubble.
Right, but if you look at the world population, on a larger scale, there was a TED Talk recently about, financially, where do you think you fit in the world finances?
We are
at the very top.
Yes.
But most students think that we're somewhere in the middle, that they personally are somewhere in the middle, because they live in America where, they may be middle class or whatever, but when you look at the world stage, it's incredible the amount of people who are living in really terrible conditions and deal with different things, and healthcare and education and all of this stuff. And how can you look at the entire world, which God is supposed to be in control of, and say that that's part of a ideal plan?
Well, I think that the very fact that the human condition has been so hard and so much suffering, I mean, we're the lucky ones. The time and the place that we were born is better than most have had it. Most have it now. But that explains why these kinds of religions have been so appealing, right? If you can take someone who's working back-breaking work 7 days a week and living in squalor and tell them, don't really worry about this life, it's the paradise to come that matters.
It cheapens.
This
gets us a point.
It's
It cheapens this life, but it also explains why it was sold.
Right. It helps explain why that sold so easily. But for point 4, and this is the one that we really spend a lot of time on when we do our
This is our manifesto.
So we're up to 4.
Yeah, we're up to 4. So Christianity is an extreme obstacle to human flourishing, and I've been challenged on this, but I'll say it absolutely and unashamedly: the world would be a better place without Christianity. And apologists will tell you that it took Christians to end slavery, and it took Christians to build hospitals, and it took Christians to have the Enlightenment and to develop science, but that's all apologetic, right? It's not true. They're apologizing.
We would have had those things sooner.
They are doing nothing but apologizing for the fact that it took the Christian Western world so long to develop all of those things. The truth is that secular human values are completely enabled without dogma. Treating people with dignity, showing respect to people of all genders and of all sexual preferences and of all races, and ending this idea that owning another human being was somehow okay. What it took was secular human values. It took people to look beyond their Christianity in order to achieve those
and then religion caught up, if at all.
And eventually religion caught up.
Some quarters.
Right, and that's what happened. But the idea of justice, the idea of the mental abuse of children and teaching them fundamental Christianity.
So that's really my main point
Yeah.
on this idea that it's an obstacle to human flourishing is really the message to kids. If you go to any of these churches within 5 miles of here, and you listen to what they're teaching the kids, it is a constant message of you are weak, You need a helper. You need to cry out to
You're
God.
degenerate and you need help.
You are flawed. You need a savior. You need a redeemer. They love the verse that says, lean not on your own understanding. And I'm thinking, that's terrible advice. Lean on your own understanding.
Right.
We like to say, if the Garden of Eden story had actually happened, the snake is the hero, right? The snake is the one that says, think for yourself. You'll know good and evil.
Be your own moral agent.
You'll know good and evil, and you won't need God to tell you.
The snake was the first secular humanist. Celebrate the snake.
I was at a high school graduation in East Texas last night. East Texas, okay? High school graduation. The valedictorian stands up. Now, this is obviously a bright kid. She's just gotten 4 point something in all of her high school, honors classes, all this stuff. And she's telling her classmates, we got through all these classes, we got through all these tests and papers, and then she says, and there's only one way we got through all this. And I'm thinking, hard work. She says, only one way. Jesus. And of course the place erupts. And then she spends the rest of her speech talking about how she prayed to Jesus before tests, she prayed to Jesus, for every part of the high school experience. And I'm thinking, and you're the brightest kid in the class, and you did the work yourself, and what have you been taught? You've been taught the lie that you need to give credit to an invisible guy that died a long time ago.
And it's more than that. You tell kids that no relationship they can ever have in their entire life is more meaningful than a relationship with someone that is disabled from giving you any meaningful feedback. Like, you have to go actively teach your brain to look for feedback because you don't actually have any meaningful dialogue.
And will burn you forever if you
burn you forever
if you burn you for all eternity if you don't believe.
Christians ask sometimes, on the BBC, they asked recently, there was a thread about this, why are atheists so angry? And in my humble opinion, I lied, I haven't had a humble opinion since second grade. In my opinion, my very unhumble opinion, that we have lied to children, and we were lied to, who are fundamentalists, for years, and so the quality of relationships that we had was cheapened, the quality of life experiences were cheapened because we didn't appreciate them for what they were, and seeing that perpetuate itself in other young minds makes me angry. The world would be a better place if all fundamentalist Christians took a step to the left and became liberal Christians, but I think the world would also be a better place if everybody took a step to the left and moved away from religious thinking and magical thinking.
Well, and human flourishing.
I'll sign up for that as a lifelong goal.
Yeah, obstacles to human flourishing, that touches on those things. It touches on scientific advances.
Science.
And
there are a lot of scientific claims in the Bible.
Thinking.
Just get away from those things.
Yeah.
Right.
But also, for me, it touches on morality as well, quality morality. Because if you are acting moral based on a crime and punishment sort of thing, and you don't know why something is moral, you just accept it and behave that way, it's much more of a moral standard to have a reason behind why you think this thing is good, and to behave well for its own sake and for humanity's sake, and not because of some fear of crime and punishment.
Dogmatism, yeah, you're right. I mean, you're exactly correct. I mean, the thing that the point that she's making is like spot on, because if you're not, you're just going by what the book tells you to do, you're not a moral agent.
Yeah.
You're not even a moral agent. You're just doing what is told to you. You're amoral.
Right.
Like,
well, no one really does that anyway.
You're not making the decision.
Every denomination has already decided what parts of the book they like and don't like, and so there are Christians who are pro-life and pro-choice. There are Christians that are pro-death penalty and anti-death penalty.
They're not moral agents.
There are Christians that keep Christmas and Christians that don't, and they all would say that they're correct based on the Bible.
Right. But you're amoral.
No, they pride themselves on that. That's a point of pride. Divine command theory. They're going off a higher.
You're just doing what.
But if those are the words of humans and they're not the words of God, then you're not only not doing what you ought to be doing, which is the hard work of figuring out what's right and wrong. You're deferring to someone else.
You're being amoral.
You're deferring to someone that lived thousands of years ago that didn't have any of the benefit of modernity and science and enlightenment.
What's also scary to me is that if you are picking and choosing what you think is moral, but you're not aware that that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you believe that this is a divine text and that you should be behaving in a certain way, but you are unknowingly cherry picking,
Yeah.
then you are not deliberately choosing something that actually is good or bad to you. You're choosing what someone interpreted it as to you.
Yeah.
And so that's what's scary to me, is that you may be moving yourself in a better or a worse direction and not knowing, you don't have as much control over whether you're actually a good person or not.
This gives us something
It's
to
so
talk about.
non-deliberate.
Sure. When various Christian denominations look at the Bible, we find over and over again that what happens is they find what they're looking for. And Rex and I don't necessarily agree completely, but liberal Christians will look at the Bible and they'll find Jesus as a social justice warrior of the first century.
Feed the poor.
Right, feed the poor and heal
Love
the
your
sick,
neighbor.
love your neighbor. And that's the Jesus they find. And on more fundamentalist denominations, you find them
Turning over tables.
worshiping
Threatening
Jesus,
hellfire,
turning
yeah.
tables and threaten hellfire, and said if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Right? I
It's
came not to
exactly the
bring-
one I was
Yeah,
thinking,
I
right?
came
You
not-
said,
I
Give
came
away
not
all
to
your
bring
possessions and follow me.
but a
Grab a
sword.
sword.
Right. So there are lots of different ways in the same document, right? This is yet more examples why this is clearly a man-made document. Is there is no consistent thread of even who Jesus is.
It's not even one document, it's a bunch of
Right,
documents.
it's a bunch of
66.
Well,
exactly.
or up to
27
80, depending on what country.
What country? Right.
Yeah, some Bibles have up to 80 books
I thought
in
it was
them.
66.
66 is the normal.
66 is standard.
But
Bible
in
West.
go to Somalia and pick up one of their books.
Coptic, is that Coptic?
I don't know.
They've got more.
Am I right, guys? I don't
Yeah.
know. Some Bibles have up to 80
Well,
books.
so
I don't know if
some
it's
of them
80.
include the Apocrypha, and then some of them include the non-canonical things, but,
But it bears
Judas.
repeating,
Yes.
if I could slip in, it bears repeating again what Rex was talking about, and it ties into this, that when you guys sometimes go to these congregations and you bring up, what's your stance on this, this, and this, and they look at each other befuddled, because they never actually talked to each other about it.
yeah.
And they could have been going to that church for decades.
I have some specific examples of this that are kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So the first thing that happens when I look Christian in the eye in a Sunday school, and often this is, either, somewhere between, say, 10 people and 30 people, depending on the class, I'll say, what do you really believe about the afterlife? Or what do you really believe about the inspiration of the Bible?
Well, the church says.
Yeah, the first answer is usually that. It's, well, the church says, or Pastor Bob teaches, or we as Methodists believe, and I just shut it down. I said, no. I want to know what you believe. I want to know what you specifically believe. And you often get an answer that's much more agnostic, much more, I kind of hope, I've always sort of wished, they'll start describing something far less certain than the church position they were about to give you. And then the thing about the disagreement within the class, we find this within the same congregation and within the class. So there was a big Baptist church, uptown Dallas, and we went several weeks in a row. They had an early class and a later class. So the early class meets upstairs, and the presenter in the class said, you cannot...
The early class.
Yeah, the early class, the more conservative one, he says, you cannot be a Christian and believe in evolution. Genesis is literal history. So this is the young earth crowd. 1 hour later, one floor below, the presenter in the class says, evolution is clearly true, Genesis is clearly metaphorical.
Are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
same Baptist church.
Same Baptist church, two different classes,
Yeah.
two different class leaders.
Wow.
But that's
And so
that
this was
the message.
and this was in reply
Same
to
denomination.
this was in
same
same
congregation.
congregation. This was in reply to my asking the question, what do you really think about young earth creation? He says, evolution is clearly scientifically true and Genesis is metaphorical.
Genesis is clearly
But so then this guy that's known him for decades, that's in the class with him, he says,
Surprise.
I never knew you thought that. They've never had the conversation. It takes the atheist to agitate the conversation between the Christians, which is always interesting to see.
I was about to congratulate them for having kind of a diversity of thought and recognizing that you can interpret it in different ways, but if they're not aware that they're differing.
Have you guys ever been, as soon as the word atheist rolls off one of your tongues, have you guys been asked to leave ever?
Never been asked
Never.
to leave.
Never.
In fact, we've always been invited back every time.
We expected
Of course.
when we started. We expected when we started that we might be asked to leave.
Courtney and I get a lot of love, but back me up here, there's always one that comes up to the microphone and gets a little hostile.
Well, in the second talk there was, but it was one guy, but the officials of the church,
They calm them down, but yeah,
you would
there's-
be an incredible trophy of theirs if they converted someone like you.
Yeah, they
And-
never
and so
tried
it's-
though.
They
Yeah,
never
well,
tried.
But beyond that, they're very humble about, kind of outwardly humble about this idea of bringing the message, and we're just going to plant that seed and God's going to take over. You know? And so they really welcome
Little do they know.
outside perspectives.
The seed is
because they're
planted.
like, hey, you
But
know,
it's not the way you think.
our truth will ring true. You know, like that will stand on its own merit.
A
That's
lot
what
of
they
them,
think.
a lot of them believe that.
Yeah.
But I think, and this is not why we do this, but I suspect what's happening is very much in reverse, which is where you're going. I think the fact that we have openly claimed the title of atheist and proudly said so, and been reasonable, decent human beings that ask difficult questions, I think that the activation of that cognitive dissonance will be unavoidable. And I don't wish ill on anyone, but I certainly hope that at least in a few minds, we've planted that seed to an extent that maybe it helps them let go of the dogma that defines their lives.
I'm looking at you too also, just the physical, and every time I've gone, you've always looked nice, but I'll come like this, in a t-shirt.
Yeah, so
But
we-
if put on a
This is the
jacket,
thing,
I
like,
think you
we're
can make
actually-
it.
we wear suits, not just
We wear
yeah.
the whole suit.
And we
I
care
think
about
that's,
and we have
goes a long way.
zero tattoos or piercings or we
Yeah, that
don't
goes a long
look
way.
like what
Well,
my
I
mother
don't
thinks an
have any
atheist
tattoos.
is.
Yeah, right, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, because
We're all
but on
godless
this,
heathens
so on
that-
this theme,
that are-
there's a couple of things that happen. One is that when in that first 10 minutes or so before we drop the A-bomb, we will say a lot about whatever they're studying. It's usually Paul, and every once in a while the
We're
Gospels.
very well
And so they know, here's two guys that really know the Bible. So by the time we say the atheist word, they know they're outgunned. Most Christians don't know their Bible at all. And so we almost never get anyone trying to convert us back. They seem to sort of accept it because they know that they couldn't. They don't. But they also always invite us back. And sometimes they invite us back to present, but they always at least invite us back to
Well,
come.
that's interesting.
To come.
We're the
Wow.
class leaders. for
Yeah, we're
two
doing-
consecutive weeks.
Yeah. The other thing that happens though,
It's hard to schedule.
the other thing that happens that's really interesting is that once you say you're an atheist in these classes, every single time what happens is when the class is finally over, we was just like linger and have conversation. There'll be the little old lady or two or three that
Or
want to
sometimes
pull
it's a-
you to the corner, and
sometimes
you
it's
think
a
they're going to school you, but it's the opposite. They want to say, I've had some of these doubts as well. I don't have anyone to talk to.
You're shitting me, I've never
No,
heard that.
I've heard that maybe some of
Told
the
you so
letters
likable.
attributed to Paul weren't written by Paul.
Yeah, maybe these
How many,
guys-
6 or 7 are complete
So,
forgeries,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And so that's the thing is that
Six
you
for
you
sure.
become the confessor because the church has no mechanism for confessing doubts, right?
No.
And so when the atheists show up, you become the one they want to talk to. And we've had people that want to meet us the next Tuesday for coffee and will talk for hours to us.
That is
Had
happening.
people that actually
Absolutely.
want to talk to you
Absolutely.
about the thing.
We're doing something wrong then, I guess. I didn't get hit up
We
like
still
that.
email and
Yeah, we always give them our card
Yeah.
and say, call us,
So,
and we'll do that.
One guy, anyway, I won't say who the church was, but it was downtown.
It was a big Baptist church.
Yeah, in Dallas. He follows us out after the.
Wait, a big Baptist church in Dallas? It
Oh,
wasn't
no,
Jeffers, was it?
this is the Methodist church.
Yeah,
the
this
church,
is-
yeah.
Robert Jeffers?
Yeah, so this is not, so we have a story about them too, but the Methodist church, and I won't say which one, and a retired engineer follows us out after a very long conversation in the class. I think it was our first visit there, we've been a number of times. And he waits until everybody's gone and he looks both ways and he says, and this guy's in the 70s, and he says, I would never use the word atheist, but you guys make some really good points. And it's just below the surface, just
So
below the surface.
when you go from
There's
about
tons of doubt.
Methodist and then to the left, Methodist, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, there are a lot of functional atheists.
Christianity light.
This is what's so
Yeah.
interesting about these
Yeah.
these Pew surveys that keep coming
Yeah.
out, where if they'll ask the question, which the
It's
newest
all
one
in
had,
how you ask the question.
do you believe in God as described in the Bible? You'll get no's from people that identify as Christians. That's the progressive crowd.
Yeah.
And yet, as long as they keep that Christian mantle, they're giving cover to the fundamentalists, right? I think the fundamentalists would be a minority
Yeah,
right
that's it.
now if everyone who is actually, doesn't believe in the God of the Bible would say so. And
Depending on
and
how
stop
you
their
measure
creation.
us, it could be anything from 6% of the population to 23%.
Exactly.
It's all how you ask the question.
It's all how you ask questions.
Yeah, the
Um,
nuns, yeah.
So that's been fascinating.
There's a dilemma there too for atheists, and Rex and I are unashamed, in addition to being sort of
Unabashed.
unabashed atheists, we are advocates for freethought advocacy. we're advocates for.
We want people doing this.
We
Own
want
it.
more people to own it. They don't necessarily have to do it the way we're doing it, but we
At least
think
be
that
out.
it's advocating for free thought is beneficial to humanity in a way that Christianity is bad for humanity.
Poisons everything.
It does.
Retards human progress.
Right.
Hitchens was right.
Hitchens was right.
Religion poisons everything.
I think that liberal Christianity poses a dilemma to people who are like-minded with us, because do we try to move everybody away from fundamentalism and make use of liberal Christianity as a stopping off point, so that for a couple of generations they become liberal Christians, and then their children or their grandchildren are able to let go because they weren't raised as fundamentalists? Or do we also try to fight the battle to take the liberal Christians and move them to atheism? That's a dilemma. But the reason that's a dilemma, I think, is the longer that liberal Christians are willing to sign up for owning the Christian label, the easier it makes it, certainly from a political and cultural and social perspective,
For the conservatives to claim
conservatives
majority.
to claim a majority.
Right.
And certainly in political speak, it allows politicians to claim that they're representing a great big majority when they're fire and brimstone, and that's what they're trying to legislate. And that's, so that's a dilemma, that's a problem that our side has to get our heads around it. But the way
Are these people allies, or
are they
are
allies
these
or
people
not?
our enemies?
The argument that I would make is, setting that whole question aside, if everybody takes a step to the left, then that's a win.
Yeah.
Well-
And if fundamentalism went away tomorrow and everybody became liberal Christians, we would solve that problem, because I think we wouldn't have politicians standing up opposing the teaching of science in science classes.
Yeah.
Can I throw a curveball at you guys
Sure.
just real quick? And we'll come right back to it, but I gotta answer it, because I know when this video airs, what the comments are gonna be. And the majority of them are gonna be, why are you guys just going after Christianity? So let me bring up Ayan Hirsi Ali, let me bring up Majid
Huge
Nawaz.
Yeah.
Majid Nawaz, you
Huge
guys?
fan.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so he's still a Muslim.
Love those guys.
And A, do you do any talks on that? And B, how do you feel about a liberal Muslim that's still a Muslim that's fighting for at least to lessen the extremity, the extremist version?
I think Ayan Hirsi Ali nailed it when she said that where Christianity had its enlightenment 500 years ago, Islam still needs that. Here's the problem. I am not the right voice for that, because I did not come from.
Yeah, I don't have the foundation.
I am a former fundamentalist.
Okay, say that
Christian.
again, just to
I am
alleviate all the comments.
I am a former fundamentalist Christian. My voice is to fundamentalist Christians
Yes.
and to Christians
Yeah.
to help them see my path.
So I
am the wrong voice.
These claims I'm
That's not
making,
my- that's not my
these
background.
claims that we're making about there's no miracle, there's no Hindu or Muslim miracles either. There's no Hindu or Muslim magic book either.
They could
You know,
be-
those plans are offensive too. I'm just not the person to carry that water. I want, you know, as many former Christians that want to be out there saying these things to the Christians, I want them to join our cause. As many former Muslims and Hindus and any other religion that are out there that want to be carrying this to that crowd, I want them to do that. So I am in no way condemning Christianity and giving a pass to other religions. I'm just not the voice to do that.
I am
Also-
not
That's
the
an important
appropriate. I
distinction.
am not the appropriate.
Yeah.
That's I think that's right, and I think that what makes you so effective as a team is your extensive knowledge of Scripture and the arguments that you're making. I think the reason that you have people coming to you is that they trust your knowledge base of that stuff, and so they want to know what conclusion you came to, because you
Yeah.
know more than they do.
It wouldn't be the same if you went to a mosque.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm not even remotely qualified to do that around the